Hey babes, my name's Hannah.
And my name's Chasity.
Welcome back to Bookish Babes. Today we are going to be telling you guys all about what we read in the month of August. So let's get into it. The first book I read this month was Kairos Emily by Abby Glines, which is part of the Rosemary Beach series. It's kind of a prequel. It follows Cairo and obviously Emily, who is Harlow's mom. And I don't really want to say too much about it other than that because it's later in the series and it'll ruin a lot. So all I will say is that I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I did really like it. I liked seeing this side of Cairo because he's very different in this book than he is in the other one.
He's very different in that one. It was a nice little addition.
Yes.
The first one that I read was Mommy's Little Girl by Diane Fanning. This case, just to tell you, like, I cannot believe I gave this book a 4 out of 5 because there's lots of, the facts are there, the evidence is provided, the writing is good. As I'm older, because I watched the case when I was younger and I was furious that she wasn't convicted because I believed she was guilty. After reading the book and seeing everything else, I just cannot understand how a jury did not convict this woman because she definitely killed her daughter. She killed her daughter.
They should put you in the jury.
Yeah, I would have convicted her, for sure. Honestly.
You crack me. She's so mad about this book.
I'm so mad about the entire thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Oh, I thought you were
No, you're good.
I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
Done. I'm done.
I'm just done. I'm just done in general. The next book I read this month, and sorry if you ever see us looking down, we have like our Goodreads up so that we can see what we rated it and everything. But the next book I read was True Love Story by Willow Astor, which follows Sparrow and Ian, who is a musician. And it's really interesting in the fact that the first chapter is them after they've broken up, and then you kind of go back into their backstory and you learn everything that led up to it. And then you kind of get to see, so basically it starts at this point, it goes back, and then you get to that point and then you see what happens afterwards. And it's really cool to kind of see how they met and see their story and see that they were they're just very different. Like I said, he's a musician who kind of slept around a lot. She was raised in a super Christian household. I think her dad was even a pastor.
We love that.
Yeah, and they really kind of hit it off even though they shouldn't have, and that's what I really liked about it. I enjoyed both of their characters and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I love Willow's writing style.
I am excited to read more by her.
Yeah.
So the next one that I read was Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren, and if you watched our July reading wrap up, you know that Hannah raved about this book. She said it was one of her favorites. I'd have to agree, honestly. This one, I really loved Macy, the main character. I could relate to her and I really understood her struggle. And Elliot was just this amazing character.
Right?
I just loved him as a person completely. I also agree with Hannah on the fact that it was really, really nice to see them as their relationship as children and then see it kind of progress.
Yes, and I love Elliot's entire family.
Love Elliot's
Elliot
entire
comes from
family.
like this huge family and it's really cool to see.
Yes, and then there was the aspect of Macy's fiance, Sean, who was actually not a bad guy, so it wasn't like you had a clear line of who she should be with, which was kind of a nice aspect.
Yeah. People don't do that very often. It's usually like one person's an asshole and one person's like this perfect soulmate.
Yeah, exactly. So I give this one a 5 out of 5.
Loved it. The next 2 books, I'm just going to group them together because they're part of the same trilogy. I read Kaleidoscope Hearts and Paper Hearts by Claire Contreras. I gave them both 4 out of 5 stars. They're companion novels. The first one follows Elle and Oliver. That's his name. Oliver is Victor's best friend, and Victor and Elle are siblings. And they kind of have always had this thing, but Victor is very protective of Elle, and so they kind of never tell him about it. They have a little bit of a thing when she's in high school, and then he like ghosts her, and then they kind of come back together at a time where she's very vulnerable because her fiance has just died.
Yep.
And it's really interesting to see how that all plays out. And I'm not going to say anything else about it. But then Paper Hearts follows Mia and Jensen. Mia is Elle's best friend. Jensen is part of Oliver and Victor's friend group. So they all kind of know each other. You know these characters from the previous book. At least you think you do, because Jensen was so different in this book than I thought he was going to be. It's also really interesting to see their story because it was so not what I thought had happened when Jensen left and moved to New York. He's an author. He's so great. He's one
We
of my
love
favorite
that.
characters ever.
We love that.
And yeah, like I said, give them both 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked these stories.
Perfect. The next one I read was One More Chance by Abby Glines. It is, what is this, number 8 in the Rosemary Beach series? I think so. It's 7 or 8. This one, Hannah also finished last month or the month before, and we have actually different opinions on this one.
Yeah.
She's kind of just over it, and I understand it to a point because, like,
Grant, 8, but there's still more.
Grant was not
It's
my
a long
favorite
series.
Yeah, Grant was not my favorite, but I really did love Harlow. The fact that there was the whole medical aspect and her wanting to keep up with the pregnancy while everyone else was telling her like it was too much of a risk. I loved that, and I also loved the parts where she was writing letters to her baby just in case
I know,
she didn't make
sad.
it. So I rated it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I am going to continue with the series even though Hannah has jumped ship.
I loved the first 3, and then it's kind of gone downhill for me. The next book I read this month was Wallflower by Krista Gold. So Krista actually messaged me on Instagram probably in the beginning of the month and contacted me and said, hey, it looks like you'd be interested in this book, just kind of based off of the authors that I follow, and I love to support indie authors, so I was really happy to check it out, and I really enjoyed it. It's a romantic suspense about a girl whose mother just died, and her mother was an author of like some pretty trashy romance novels, and her old publisher asked her to read her diaries that she kept and continue on with the series, because she's also an author. Yeah. It's kind of like a ghostwriter aspect, and she ends up meeting this really cute gardener from next door, but like a whole bunch of shit goes down. She gets like some threatening messages. She's very clearly getting like stalked, and she's getting all these letters about her mom's past that she kind of realizes she never really knew her mom, and like this whole thing is a mystery.
That escalated quickly.
It did escalate very, very quickly, and I thought that I had it figured out, and I definitely didn't, and I was shocked by the ending. So I don't want to say too much about it because I think that anything that I say will ruin it, but I would definitely recommend checking it out, and bravo, Krista. This was a really, really, really great book.
Yeah, definitely have to check that one out. I did read another book this month, but it was a beta read, and I cannot talk about it yet.
So she's going to keep you guys on your toes.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. The next book I read this month was Brightside by Kim Holden. I was really excited to pick this up. I've heard really, really great things about it. However, I have not rated it yet because I don't exactly know quite how I feel about it. I love the characters so much. Never in my life have I been so obsessed with every single character in a book.
Oh.
And I loved their friend group and that kind of aspect of it. However, like the beginning was great. The middle was super, super, super slow. I found myself getting really bored. I found myself like skipping pages and just like wanting something to happen. And then the end was beautiful. Like, you know, it's like, how do you rate a book like that where like I think it's so important, and I think that everybody should read this book. However, there were parts where I was bored. So it's like, I guess maybe I'd rate it a 4 or a 3.5 because I did like it.
I think that's fair.
But it wasn't. I was kind of disappointed. I was bored. I know. I feel bad because so many people love this book.
I do have to read that.
Literally, it has an average rating on Goodreads of, let me check, 4.39, which is really high for an average rating. Like, everybody loves this book, and I did really like it. But like I said, I was just kind of like, oh my god, is something gonna happen? I know. And then, since she's done, I'll just go into my last book, which was Swear on This Life by Renee Carlino. Yes?
Yes. Love her.
Freaking incredible. 5 out of 5. It's about this girl who is a struggling author, and she ends up picking up this book that her friends keep recommending to her, and she doesn't really want to pick it up because, you know, she's a struggling author and she doesn't really want to see somebody who's succeeding as an author right now. But she picks it up and she starts reading it, and she's like, wait a second, this story sounds familiar. And it's because somebody that she knew as a child wrote her story from her point of view and didn't tell her. And so you kind of go back and forth. One chapter, yes, girl. One chapter is her now, and the next chapter is a chapter in the book that she's reading. It's so cool. And you
My
figure
nightmare.
out, no, but it's actually, it's not like, it's not creepy because this guy is somebody that she was in love with. They were neighbors. Yeah, so this mysterious author goes by the name of Jay Colby, which she figures out is Jason, aka Jace, the guy that she's been in love with since she was a young child. And they live together at the end of like this like weird like road. I don't know how else to describe it. Like it's so secluded. And they both had really complicated family lives. So like huge trigger warning. There's like addiction. She lives in foster care. There's domestic abuse, alcoholism, prostitution.
Oh, I need to read
so
this book.
you do, because they both have really complicated family lives. So like maybe don't pick it up if that's something that's sensitive to you. But holy cow, this book was incredible. And it's so interesting to see because you're hearing her story as she's reading it. So like one chapter is her reading a chapter, and then the next chapter is her kind of reacting to it and her.
That's very cool.
Yes, and he kind of changes a few details, but there's a reason why he changes a few details. It's so freaking interesting. And you end up really loving her and her best friend and her aunt, who eventually takes custody of her, and her aunt's partner. It's like the best book ever. It's one of the best books I've ever read. You
I
gotta
have to
read
read it.
It's
I
so
have
good.
to read it. That's
I have
so,
a physical
so
copy of it. I'll let you borrow it.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, because I bought it. I didn't read it on my Kindle. I read it like on an actual paperback copy.
Sweet.
It was so good.
All right, well, that is it for us today. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Comment down below and let us know if you've read any of these books. And definitely tap that notification button so that you know every time we upload. And that's it.